Uh, Welcome back, guys, to the channel. Today we'll be building a TODO app with React and Tailwind CSS for the backend of Firebase. So to start the project, let's go to the terminal and type the command npx create React app, and the name is TODO app YouTube. So this command will give us the basic template for the to start with the project. It will take a few minutes. Until then, we'll set up our Firebase here. So you just log into your Google account with Firebase, click on Add Project, give it a name. I'll give it React to the app YouTube. Click Continue. Disable it if you can. If you want, you can enable it. Not a problem. Uh, Let it get done. Basically, this is a backend tool that is provided by Google. Really simple and easy to work with. It's done. Click Continue. So now, since you're building a web application, you can directly click on this button, Web, which says Web, and this is basically setting up the Firebase for our app. So we can again type our application name here, and I'll also set up hosting to show how we can host in Firebase. It's free. So if you're first time using Firebase, you need to run this command in your terminal and just add a -g so that it is installed globally. I've already installed it, so I'm not going to install it now. Click next, and also install this tools. Next, we will continue to console. So now we are ready. So first we will be using two things, authentication and this database for in a project. So I click authentication, get started, and here we'll select Google authentication. So we'll be doing Google authentication in this project. Enable this, provide an email ID, see, and that will allow us to use Google authentication in our project. So that's done. Now let's click on Firestore database. So this is basically a NoSQL database wherein we don't have any tables and records. Instead, we have a collection document format. This is mostly used in companies nowadays. So we'll start in test mode. Next, you can select which one is nearby you, and I'll keep it default and enable it. So this will give us access to a Firebase database. So I'm not going to do anything with the security rules as of now. I'll keep it the basic. So if I refresh, I'll be redirected to yeah. So this is a database. So now we have done this. So setup is ready. Now we'll check on our yeah. So this is also done. Our project is ready. So we can move to our project TODO app YT and open it on Visual Studio. Close this. I don't need that terminal now. Can close that. So here is the basic templates provided by the Create React app. So this is a package which you won't be using at all. This is basically the packages that we installed, the other packages we'll be installing that will be actually added into this module. This public folder is basically, it holds all the static files. This index.html is basically which is rendered on the screen, and we will be adding a code which will basically just change this page. It will be rendered on a single page will be rendered, and the contents that we change are updated on this page. So for now, we'll change this to TODO app and let it be as it is. We are not going to touch this also much. So you can put in your static files like images and videos here. This is the heart of React.js, this source folder. This is where we'll be making our changes. Whatever we'll be adding inside the source folder. Here we actually don't need certain files. We can delete that. So firstly, this app.test.js, logo.js, even app.css because we are going to be using Tailwind CSS, and setup test. I can delete them. You can also keep them, that's your wish. But I like to always delete that because we're not using it. Then why should be there? So you can remove this logo because you deleted the file now. And I'm going to delete everything here and just type in sorry, and run h1c to do app. Save this. So yeah, VTR is running now. The system is a bit slow, so please manage that. And you can actually start a project. I'll open the terminal. To open the terminal, you can either press Ctrl J in your keyboard in Windows, and in uh, Mac, I guess it's Command J. I'm not sure. So here you can type npm. So we are using npm in this project. So I'll type npm start, and it will start a project. So it's running the React scripts. Basically, whatever it's available here, it's just running that. And now you can see here our application has started. It's loading, and yeah, we have an error saying that we can't resolve /app.css. That's because I deleted that file and its references appear. It doesn't need that. And now if you see to do app, so we can start with the project. So before starting, let's set up Tailwind CSS also. So go to browser, type React Tailwind CSS, and I think it's this. Yes, it's that. So here you can see their documentation. They have multiple things. That's basically very similar to Bootstrap, but I would say it's much more better than Bootstrap to use because you can style in whatever way you want. In Bootstrap, you have some limitations with the stylings, but here you can do it from your scratch. So here it says we have already created a React app, so we can directly move on to this. We can install this Tailwind CSS. Open up the terminal and do another one for installation. This is running our application now. So just page that, install that. That's done. And also initializing it so that the application will know that we are using Tailwind CSS. And once I press this, it will create a file here, a Tailwind config file. So you can see here created Tailwind CSS config file, and it's here. This is the file that it's created. So now we are almost done with this. So we can go down. We can just copy this line. Basically, this tells Tailwind CSS that access you can access all the files inside the source directory which has the extension JS, JSX, TS, or TSX. So if it finds any of these files with this extension, it will can have access to that file and it can apply the CSS we are applying here. So now that's done, and now one more final step is we need to copy these utility classes. Basically, these utility classes have the CSS actual CSS written in them, and we can just use the classes names to apply them to our elements here. So I'll go to index.css, I'll remove everything and just paste this. That's done. So now if we check, to check if you have to Tailwind CSS correctly set up, you can just like you have a h1 tag here, right? So you know basic h1 tag in HTML will have this type of CSS applied default. So if now Tailwind CSS, it should be gone, but it's not going. Okay, I'll just setup is correct. Okay, I'll just restart the server once because we installed new things. So I'll just restart the server. What was this? The styling should be stripped off because Tailwind CSS by default strips off all the stylings that are applied by default. It should have been done, but let's restart and check. No utility classes. See now. So now we can see that the h1 tag is not looking like an actual h1 tag. So this means that a Tailwind CSS is correctly set up. So if you want to check more, you can see you can just apply this. It's just like Bootstrap. You can just provide the class name and it will apply it. So here I'll say text red of 500, and you can see that it converted to red. So now to make this Tailwind CSS a bit easier, we can go to our extension tab, type in Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and you can install this so that you can get this IntelliSense. Like if you want to see, you can see this class is already coming up, so you can install that for a Tailwind CSS. So now we also have set up our Firebase over here. This I can close now. Firebase over here. So now in order to connect your application to the Firebase, you can click on this settings, project setting, and scroll down. You will see your web app version here. Go down, click on config, and you will see a configuration code here. Copy that and come to your project. Inside the source directory, create a firebase.js. You can name it anything, but keep in mind it should be JS file. Paste the key here, and now you can like have access to those functions. So now I'll be first I need to install Firebase in this application so that I can use its utility classes here. So I'll just say npm install Firebase. Check if I have Firebase globally installed. So this one takes a time, and I would also like to show you one more package today. So React Firebase hooks. I'll be using only one hook which is present inside this package, which is for authentication. So you can add a real-time listener for the authentication. This is basically a library which will allow make your accessing your working with Firebase much more easier, and it's based on Firebase v9 as you can see here. So I'll also install this, but in this project I'll be using only one uh, hook which is present in that package. Usually Firebase takes a bit more time to install, so I will just start with the project and we'll continue with that. So before starting, I'll just add a two folders here. I always like to make two folders, one for components and one for pages. And here I'll, so for temporarily, I'll say here we have a variable const user, which is by default false. I'll tell you why I did that right now. So now I'll use this. This basically means a JSX operator. Here basically you can write JavaScript code inside this directly. So I'll write here no user. So this basically means if there is no user, and this is a ternary operator which I'm going to use. So I'll explain that in a second. So I'll say login page, else I want the home page. So basically what this does is the basic ternary operator which is an if else condition. So it checks if there is a user, if there is no user available for the application, then you show the login page, else you show the home page. So that's the basic simple one-line code there. This is called a ternary operator. I won't save it because if I save it, it will fire me the error saying this login page and home page are not found. So I'll just create those then now. In the inside pages, I'll create a JS and here type RFCE. This is a snippet, React snippet which I'll use. And if you don't have that, you can just go to the extension and type ES7 and you'll get this ES plus 7 plus React Redux snippet. Install this and you will be able to use those snippets. It has multiple snippets other than this. Now the login page is created. I can just, this basically works in React. You can just click on the components and end of the component and control space and you'll get the import statement along with it. So if I press enter, it will be imported automatically. So I'll also create this home page now and create this, save it and import it from here. So that will be done now. So if you now reload the application, I'll see the login page because here I say user is false. So if it is false, it means that there is no user. And to prove that, if I change this to true, here you'll see home page now. So just to see the output really simple, I'll just drag it around here and drag it as small so that you can see the output side by side. So I'll by default make it false because I want to like make the login page and complete with the user authentication first. So if I just say here, yeah, it's installed now. I'll also install React, Firebase, hooks. It's it hook or just it's hooks. Okay, so I'll just install that for using that one authentication hook that we get. So just to start this user authentication first, I'll first like set up this configuration, the Firebase configuration file first. So I need this initialize app method, which is actually present in Firebase slash app, and it shows me Firebase. Is it installed? Firebase is installed, but it doesn't show me okay, that's interesting. Let's figure it out. I'll just say here initialize app. Okay, the IntelliSense is not working properly. Firebase config, copy is initialize app, but I don't know, but it's correct from Firebase slash app, and it shows me an error here. The expected comma, That's a new type of error. I didn't get this earlier. So what I do, I just again just check if it is because of some installation problem. Try to start and close this. Oh my god. Mm, Starting. No. it should work. I think it will work. Let the application load. I think it will work. It says, yeah, it's got nothing to do with the application. So let's continue. So firstly, I need an auth object, which will be get auth. So basically, this is a function from Firebase that will provide us with the authentication functionality. So I'll just import it from Firebase slash auth. And I also need, for Google authentication, we also need a Google provider. So I'll say new Google auth provider, and again import this from Google auth. And now they are ready, they are initialized, and I can now export them so that I can use it in other files in the project. I'll just export the auth and provider. We'll create a database after some times. So now here it is. If there is no user, it will be login page. So now it is no login page. So now let's create a simple login page. For the login page, I'll keep it very simple. I'll keep a h1, which would say my to-dos, my to-do, my to-dos. And I'll style it as the text should be 3XL, so it'll be like a bigger text. I want it to be a bold font, bold, so it'll be bold, and I want the text to be maybe red 400, or I could say um, no, let it be black for now. I'm not much interested in styling in this project. And then I'll just create a button which says sign in with Google, and I'll provide it with a BG, maybe something like an orange color, orange 400 with a padding of 3. Text inside should be a small, so text SM means text small, and I want the font of the text to be bold and the text color to be white, and I want the border of the button to be rounded and it should be um, medium. So if I save this, you can see that this is the button that we get now. And I can also use just this point called hover, state called hover, and basically it means when you hover on hover the button, I want the button to scale up a bit. So I'll say scale to 110, and this scaling, that means it's transmitting from one state to another. So I'll say transition, or whatever transition happens, it should take a duration of 200. So if I like don't mention this, you can check that it like happens very quick and it's not much a good UI experience. So if I just change that to transition all with a duration, I'll say to take 200 milliseconds, and you take in it ease in and ease out. So now if you see, it's smooth enough, smooth. And now just I'll give a margin top of 5 so that it comes down away from the text. And now I'll style the div, so I'll give it a text center. Everything comes to the center, and I'll say a margin top of maybe 56 so that it comes a bit down, and that's enough. So now I think we can carry forward with the login functionality. We'll be doing a Google sign-in. So when you click on this button, then you have pop-up coming up with your Google accounts. You can select an account and automatically you'll be logged in. And you must be thinking that it's a bit difficult, very difficult job, but with Firebase, it's really simple. So now actually we have got this authentication and provider from here. So what I can say is in the login page, I can create a simple function called const sign in user, and I'll say it's an arrow function. And inside this, I'll just call in not getting the IntelliSense for Firebase. I don't know why it's not giving me the IntelliSense. Usually it should give sign in with pop up. I guess that's the function, and I need to pass in the authentication from our Firebase. So this dot fire slash Firebase is our local Firebase file which we just created now. Here, this is the file, and I also need to find the provider. I'll pass the provider. So actually that's it. That's the function which you need to create for signing in. So I can, just to make sure that it's no error, I'll catch an error. Basically this is a promise in JavaScript. The promise is basically like you provide something if there is some delay. So it may take some delay because it should reach the Firebase host, create a user, and then return back. So for that process to happen, and if you have any error, you can catch it. So you can actually write the dot then also, but I don't want dot then because there's nothing I need to do when the user is signed in successfully, because I already done it here in the app.js file. If there is a user, you can directly show the home page. So I'll just in case if there is an error, I'll catch the error and I'll put an alert saying the message, basically the error message. Save that. And now it says that module build failed. All right. So get out initializer from Firebase slash app. That's actually correct, but it's showing me that there is nothing there. It says it needs a comma. That's what I don't understand. Why do you need a comma when you are just import? Oh, I understood. My mistake. That's a really simple mistake because I const here instead of writing import. So be careful with that because you need to import those files from these packages. And now it says sign in with pop-up is not defined. Yeah, because I didn't import that. So I just need to copy that and import it from Firebase slash auth. And now this button which we created, I can say on click of this button, you call sign in user. So now if everything is correct, and because we already made this authentication here, set up the authentication in Firebase with Google, if everything goes well, when I click, I should get a pop-up to sign in with the account. So if I click sign in, here comes the pop-up. I can select my account here, and now nothing happens here. You can, because I've not connected that user with, by default I've set the user as false, so it will be always false. But if you need to check whether you're logged in, you could go to the Firebase, go to authentication, and refresh here, and you'll see your user here. So it has a user, and now all I need to do is use that hook I was talking about from the React Firebase hooks package. So I can destructure user here, and I say use auth state, and I pass in our authentication object from our local Firebase file, and it will error out saying use auth state is not defined. So I can import that use auth state from React Firebase hooks slash auth, and now it comes to home page, because now it, when the application refreshed, it saw that there is a user here which is sitting in the Firebase. So this user, so Firebase triggered that function and it changed the value of user, and now I'm in the home page. So now first let's make the home page header so that I can provide the sign out functionality for the user. So as of now I don't need this Firebase. So in the home page, the login page is done. That's it with login page. I'll try to keep it simple. So here I can like create a header component and go inside my components file folder and create a header.js, and again this RFC snippet. So that's header created, and I can import that from there, and I now show header. So my header will also be very simple. It will have a H1 saying my to-dos, and it will have this styling of mhm, text 3XL again, and font should be bold, and that's done. And next I'll add an image here, the user's image, because when you use user's image will be displayed basically. So I can also do that because we have already done the authentication part and we are using Google's sign-in, Google authentication. Google actually provides us with a user's image that is provided by the user for their Gmail account or the Google account they are using. So I can again destructure user here from this use auth state and provide with auth. And here instead of this text, I can say that I have some JSX or a variable to be shown here. So I can say user dot photo URL, and in the alt I can say a profile, some text here, and provide a class name of height of 10, width of 10, and rounded full, so that it will be like this. So we can style this basically. I want it a flex so that it will go in a row, item center so that they are aligned in a perfect line, and I want justify between so that they go to end. They are completely stretched between the header. So I will take the full space here, and this header I want it to be sticky to the top. So it will be anyway. Even if you scroll down, it will stick to the top because I said top 0 and sticky. And I want the BG background to be white. We need to explicitly mention this because by default it's when you scroll down it becomes transparent because you're saying it's sticky. So when you go scroll down it becomes transparent by default. So I say BG should be white and Z index to be 10 so that it is displayed above everything. And I can add a shadow. It's very simple. You just say shadow large or whatever size you want. I'll use a large so that it'll just provide that slight shadow there, and with a padding of 5. That's it. Now I can make the sign out functionality. So when you click on this image, I will trigger the auth, which is the authentication object that we created, dot sign out, and that's it for sign out. So if I so it's an image, that's why it's not getting that. So I can see cursor pointer here, so that it feels like a button. Now if I click here, see it brings me to my login page, and but the user here is available. Just the state of the user is changed now. So I can again sign in with the same account or different account and it will do the same. It will add, if I log in with a different account, it will add another user in the database. So now the header part is done. So that's it with the header for now. So now let's make the body of the page. So this will be the body, and make it as a component as of now. You can change it if you want to change it into a page. Just import that and it'll show body. Okay. So the body, firstly I want a div. I will create a div which will have a h2 tag saying my to-dos, and it will have a class name text of 2XL, font to be bold, and a button which will be called add to. So it will be used for adding to-dos, and this will have a class name of bg 5,400. Text should be small again. The same basic styling that I applied for the sign in button, but that's just the color will be different. Text bold or font bold, sorry, not text bold. Font bold, and text should be white again. Okay, yeah, with the padding of 3 and rounded large. That's good enough. And on hover scale to 110 with a smooth transition. So transition all the duration of 200 millisecond and ease in and out. So that's it. So now I can style this div and say it's a flex again, and item should be in the center with justify between so that it will be in a single line and stretched apart. I want this div to have a margin top of 5 so that it comes down a bit, doesn't stick to the header. And I should also have a padding of 3 so that it doesn't stick with this corners. So that's done now. So now below I will like display all the to-dos list. I'll add a to-do list, store it to the database, fetch the data from the database, and will display it here. So basically now I'll create another div below this and to mention into all the to-dos here. Inside this I can create a to-do card for now. I'll create another component so it is reusable. I'll use a component to RSC, save it, import it here. In the to-do card, I'll use two things. So one thing I forgot, I can go to the header and instead of this div here, I could change this to actual header tag because it is available in HTML and it will be more efficient because it will the code browser will know that it's a header and Google crawlers when they come to our website they'll know that it is a header directly. So now inside this div, um, I'll be displaying three things basically. One is I'll create another div and here I'll say I have a basically to name here first and I want the time here when it was uploaded, when the div or basically when it was created. And then lastly I have another div with two buttons basically. One for updating the to-do, sorry, updating the to-do and one for deleting the to-do. So I'll just provide a basic styling here. You can style it as you want. Sorry. So where update it is, I'll make it again a green color so that will be nice. Text small, text white, font bold, padding of 3 or maybe 2. Okay, let's try 3. I see that. Okay, I'll just use rounded large. Alright. And to save time, I'll just copy this class again, paste it here, and just change this to red. And for this one button, I'll just provide a margin right of 3. So that they're separated here. This div is okay. So now this div, I want this thing to be a flex, but in a column wise. So I want the name above and the text below. That's now this entire div, parent div, I make it a flex with items at the center and justify between. I'll see it touch the end. Uh, Basically, what you can do is for this div, I can provide a margin top of 5 also so that it comes down a bit, and a padding of 3 or maybe even 4, which will be much better. And here I can just provide a max width, which just means this div cannot go beyond this maximum width. So it can't go beyond maybe 2 XL. It doesn't show anything now, but when I go bigger screen, you can see it's limited to here. Oh, sorry, I closed that by mistake. So I can use this localhost again, and it will come. So you saw now, when I opened it again, it automatically logged in because it had this user already logged in. The user was logged in and it was not, I didn't log out of it, just close the application. So you'll by default have this persistence of your user. So now this is done. Change the basic layout. So if you want, I can also make, so just temporarily I'll make this BG gray of 100 or maybe 200 and make it a rounded L so that it is rounded. So now this is this. This is a basic to do which will be updating. So now in this body, uh, about this basically about this to do, I'll be creating a model which is basically a div again, but a model which will pop up which will have an input tag, input area and a button wherein you can add your to-do and just add it to your database. So it will be simple. It will be an input tag with a placeholder saying enter a to-do, and you'll see it here, and along with a button which will say add. Sorry, yeah, add comes there. So we can style this to give it a maximum with the large or maybe XL, and make it a flex with items at the center and justify it between. That's this. Okay, that's good. Now, what else can be done? I can provide a padding of 2 so that it doesn't stick with the edges. For this placeholder, I can say the class name and flex as 1. So you can see this is only this much, but the place is available completely. So if I say flex 1 and save it, it will take the entire space available. So basically this flex 1 means you can take up however space you have. It just means you can take the maximum space available. And I'll provide it a BG of gray 100. It's very subtle 100, so 200 maybe. Yeah, now it shows, and a margin right of 2 so that it doesn't stick the ad page. And here I can provide a padding of 3. It's bigger, yeah, and a rounded large so that it's rounded corners. And now you can see this ugly outline which comes in when I click. So I can just say outline none, and that outline will be disappear. So now it's much nicer. Uh, I would like to just provide this green color styling to this add button so that now it's done. So now you can enter something here and you click on the add and it will be added to the database. So now I think we can do that first. So not to do that, so whatever is happening here, typed here by the user, it should be stored somewhere so that I can send that to the database. So for that, we have this temporary variable called state in React. The syntax for creating a temporary variable state variable is this. You create an array with 2 values. One is the input, which is the variable, and you have another helper function, which is called, you can use it any name, but it is preferably used like use if your variable is input, you can use set with an input, so it will be easier for you to access. And this will be a function. You can't directly access this variable like you do in JavaScript. You create a variable, say you create a variable A and you assign it like this. But in React, you can't do that. It has its own syntax. So you can like define it as use state variable and import use state from React and give it a default value and say it's empty string. By default, it's empty. So now whenever you have to change this value of input, you need to use this function to do the same. So now I can make this input the value of the text box. So I can combine it to text box. So in the input field, I can say the value of this should be input. So if I say this input and now I come here and I type, I'm actually typing, but it's not showing anything because we have said the input default value of the input is empty string. So even when I see this input is now connected to this value input, it simply means that whatever it's always going to be empty string no matter whatever you type. So now, so to see whatever you're typing on this text box, you need to add one more thing here. You have something called as on change, which is triggered when you type something. So it returns an event, which is basically a text which is typed in this box. It has multiple events. One of them will return you the text that you entered in this text box. So you can see this and you say set input to be whatever is in this e dot target dot values. So this simply means whatever the user has typed in this, you set it to this input. So when you say set input, it basically refers to this and it will change whatever the value you pass it put into this input value. So now if you type, it shows and it's simultaneously being stored in this input value variable. So if you want to see that, you just inspect your application, go to console. This is a previous one which I gave. So I can type here console log the input. So in React, when you console log the input, it will show up here. So if I type H, it shows me H E L L O C. So you can can now see that it is stored in the variable. So now what I can do is I can remove this, and now it's here. So I can first create a function. I might also need the user here in order to create a document only for the user. So basically, the user who logs in, he will have his own to-dos, and when different user logs in, the two users should not be able to see each other's to-dos. So to do that, we need this user here. I just explain it how you can do that, and it's very simple. And you provide the auth again. So here I'll create a function of add to, and it will be an arrow function here. And to add a document, you simply have one function and you just have to call one function and pass in the data. So I can say add doc. It doesn't show up, but it's a Firebase function. Add doc. Let me just import it or it will give us errors. So import add doc from Firebase slash add doc is it Firestore. So from the Firebase Firestore, we import add doc. And you have something called as a collection, which will give you a reference of a collection. So basically it will point towards a collection which you mentioned in this. So now here we actually need our database connection. So I'll go to Firebase configuration again, and here I'll create our database first, which we created basically there. I need a reference of that. So I'll just say get Firestore, and once initialized, it already imported because I auto imported it now. So I can pass this DB to our export. So now I can access it here. So this collection function requires a DB first. So it will basically go inside this DB, which we just created in the Firebase configuration file. And then I want a collection called user. If there is no collection with a name, it will create it automatically. And I want to go inside it and I want to do something called this user actually provides us a lot of details about the user. So I can see it. So you can have delete, you can have the display name, which will provide the name of the user, email, which is the email of the user. There are multiple functions here. Photo URL, which is basically the photo, and the phone numbers if they are provided with it. So now I just need the ID, which is the UID, basically a unique ID for the user. So basically, this is a collection document collection structure, as I told you. So this is user is a collection, and inside this collection, I'll be creating a document with user ID, with the user ID, and then inside that data, so it will be for each user to be unique ID. So it will create different records. So when we fetch the data, it will not be able to fetch two different users' data. So inside this user data, I'll have a to-dos collection. So inside this collection, I'm going to add a document with the data will be three things basically. The to-do name, which will be the input, basically the input if you type here, that will be the to-do name. And then I want the status, which is by default false, because by default the to-do which you're creating will not be complete, it will be incomplete. So I put it false, and I need a time and it was updated. So for time, you can put in your local time, but that doesn't won't be nice because the users can be from anywhere. So in to make the time a common thing, we can use the timestamp provided by Firebase. So we can say server timestamp, and that's it. So now we will have a to-do name, the status of the to-do, and the time to be added to the database. So once this is done, just for a confirmation, I'll use a dot then and add an alert saying to be added, and also catch any error if there is any error, alert error dot message. All right, so then now I can just simply call that function when you click on this button, and to do I can call. So now if everything is correct, when we type something, say jogging, or maybe go for a jog, and if I add, it shows to do added. And to check that, we can go to our database, and you will see a collection here, user with the user ID and the to dos, and you can see here the to do of the individual with all the data. This is the timestamp provided by Firebase. So that's done. And now once this is done, I need to remove this input from here. So I'll just say set input to empty string. All right. So that will update now. And one more thing, I don't want this to be shown every time. Only when I click this button, I want this basically this model to be shown. So I'll create a state variable to keep track of that. So I can say show add to do model, comma set show add to do model equal use state of false. So by default it will be false, and then we can access that when you click on this add to. So I can see here on click of this add to, I can just write an inline function saying set add show and to do model to true. So now when I refresh the application, it will be there because I didn't add that condition here. I just created that condition, but I didn't add it. So basically the to-dos are here, and this is the div that is responsible for this. So I can wrap this to div inside a JSX saying only if show add to do model is true. This double lines means only if it is true, you need to show this. So this div, I can completely cut this div and put it inside here, and I save it, and it will disappear. And when I click, it will show up the add. Now that's like nice. So we have a to do now. So in this page, we can also fetch the data from the database. So I'll just say to display now the to do. You can see a use effect. This is a function which will be triggered based on certain condition. So now the condition can be provided here. If it's empty, the dependency array, this is called the dependency array, and if it is empty, this function will be triggered only once when the application loads. So I want it to apply to only when the application loads, and I can add some functionality here. So on snapshot, this is a Firebase real-time listener provided by Firebase. It basically will see for changes whatever happens to the data collection that you give in the reference, and whenever there is a change it will automatically fetch again. So on snapshot, I mean for this collection, and this is the same collection that we created here. So this also requires the database, so I'll just copy these two objects here, pass it here, and then it will actually return us a function with a snapshot of the real-time snapshot of the data present in that database or the collection, sorry. So here I can now create a state variable to keep track of this data. So I can say const todos comma set todos equal a use string of an empty array. So by default it's an empty array and we'll store all the data that is returned by this function inside that array. So I'll just say set to do, and this part will be a bit tricky to understand. So what we can do is we'll go inside the snapshot returned by this real-time listener dot. It has documents, all the documents that are present inside our collection, all the docs, and map through each doc. So map is a JavaScript function which will like iterate through each ends present inside that array. So basically this returns an array of documents and I map through each one of them, and it will return an array. So I'll say this map will map through each document in this list and will return implicitly an object. This object will have three values again. So the first thing will be the to-do name, and it will firstly it needs an ID, unique ID for each document. So I'll say doc dot ID, yeah, and then I'll have the to-do name, which is doc dot data. So it's present inside the data. So what does that mean? That means here this is the document, basically the ID, and this is the data of that document. So when you say ID, it refers to this, and when you say data, it refers to the entire thing. So what I can do is here the data I can say dot to do name, then I have the status, and I can say here again doc dot data dot status, and the time, which is doc dot data dot time. And once I return these, I can like see this console log to-dos. And since we added a to-do to the database recently, we'll see an array one, and it says that same data. Status is undefined. It's showing undefined because here it is actually false, but here it is saying undefined. Alright, let's check if it works. So we are getting our data, we have a database now, and we can like do it here. So instead of displaying a to-do card here, what we can do is use a JSX, and we can again loop through all our documents that are returned from the database. So I'll say to-dos dot map, sorry, map through each to-do and return implicitly. So for implicit return, you need to use parentheses, which will directly return something. So I'll return a to-do card again, but this time I need to provide a key which is unique because React needs to know that whenever there is a re-rendering happening, it should not render the entire list of to-dos, but only the to-do that was added or deleted. So here I can say it is to-do.id. I need the to-do name. I also need the ID of the to-do. For deleting the to-do, I need the ID. So to-do.id, the to-do name. This is basically props which I'm passing to this component that I created here so that I can access them here and display the things here. To do name, to do dot, to do name, status will be to do dot status, and the time here I need to pass in specifically the time. So what I do is I can say to do dot time dot, I'll convert that into a proper date format and then get the time from that date. So now I'll pass ID, to-do name, status, and time to a card so I can like access it here. This is props. This comes in the form of props. So you can say props and you can type here, say props, sorry, not progress, props dot to-do name, and okay, sorry, it should be in a JSX because it's a variable. It should be inside a JSX fragment. So I can say props dot to name, and you can see it says go for a job. So instead of this props dot, we can directly restructure it, say a object, and I can remove all them. I have passed ID, I have passed the to-do name, I have passed the status, I have also passed the time. So now it says props is not defined. So because now I've restructured it, I can directly say to-do name and it will see remain the same. For time, if I just see time, it will be some random number. So basically, it's a random number. It's just a time in the seconds or milliseconds format, I guess. And then, so to convert this, I can make use of this library called React. Sorry, not React. Moment.js. When you go to the site moment.js, it's basically a package which can be used to format dates and times. So I'll install this moment library into our project first, and don't leave out this warning because it says that use effect hook as a dependency user. So because in our home body we are using this use effect and we are passing in something called a variable here, so this automatically becomes a dependency here. So I need to pass that user here, and I guess that's it. Yeah. So the package is installed. I can go here. Instead of time, I can say moment and I pass in the time and I say the format should be LT, and if I save this, just watch here, if I save this, it converts into the time. So that's done. Now let's just style these a bit. I can provide a class name, just say it is a font semi bold, and this will be a class text should be extra small so that it is small here, and say the margin top of 2. That's nice. So here we have also the status available. So based on the status, what I can do is I can change the background color. So I'll remove this background color as of now here from here, and I'll just wrap this entire thing inside a fragment because I'm going to use a variable. And so use a variable, you need to use backticks instead of uh, normal codes. And this backticks is available right below the escape key in your keyboard. I can use $sign and this will allow me to add a variable here. So I'll check the status. If it is true, I want the background color to be a green of 200, or else I want the BG to be a red of 200 and I say, and it show me a red color because this is when I created this document, it has a false value. So that's the reason why it's now red. So that's working for fine as of now. And in general, I can also give this a margin top of 3 so that when we have more documents, okay, we have a margin top of 5. All right. Okay, I can just make it a 3. So now we only have this update and delete function to be performed. So first let's delete the function. We have this ID available here for each document. And this basically because we are creating it through a map function for each uh, document you have, it will have a unique ID and the ID will be passed. So I'll add some more to dos. I'll say uh, breakfast add, and it shows me this is a problem we face because it's today. Because this is happening because sometimes this to-dos can be empty because when the page is loading or when the data is being fetched, the status of this can be empty. So in order to save us from that, we can say from running into these errors, we can say a question mark here, which will basically mean if you have to-dos, then perform the following. Otherwise, ignore the statements after this. So I can also, just to make it safe, I can put question mark here, just in case the loading happens. Now you can see two to-dos. Here, I'll add one more scene, uh, video, edit, and so it's working now. That's good. So now let's do the delete function. So to delete, I'll create a function up here. I'll say const delete to, and it will accept an ID. And we can say simple. We have a single function. We have delete doc, which is from Firebase Firestore, and I just need to pass in the reference of the doc. So what I'll say is I'll pass the reference of the doc by calling using the doc function available by the Firestore. I can provide the DE and I want to go inside the user. I need the user ID also for this. So I need the user from use auth state and provide the auth. I can see here user again question mark because when it is loading it can be empty, and inside the to-dos I will pass in this ID. Sorry, this ID. So because that's the ID which I'll get when I click on this, which is basically this ID that is passed here. So now it will delete the doc. It will delete. But I need to call this from here. So on the click of the delete button, you call delete. I can't call it like this because now I have to pass a variable. I need to make it an inline function. I'll call the delete to do with the ID that I got from this. So now if this is done perfectly, I can click on delete, go for job, and that's gone. And that's really gone because you can see here we have only two, one for video edit and one for breakfast, and the third one is gone. So we have completed delete function successfully. Now to update, so I'll make it a simple function for update because when I click on update, I'll just change this status of the document to true so that it will be completed. Alright, so it will be complete. It will show a status of complete. So for that, I can again simply create a function called update to do, and Do I need an ID here? Yes, I need an ID here also. So I can see again a function is simple. We have update doc from Firebase and it needs a document reference. So I can set the document reference again. I can just copy paste this because it's the same here. Copy that, paste it here, and then it needs the data to be updated. So I just say you just update the status to true and the time to a server timestamp because on the time of update should be reflected on the document. So with that said, now I'll just click on update in breakfast, and if it is correct, I think the background should turn green. So I click on update. Okay, it updated here. Breakfast. Oh no, edit. Okay, that's because I made the function, but I didn't call the function. So I can just say on, sorry, not on click. I on click. I want to call this update to do with the ID of the document. That was a mistake. So if I update breakfast, now see the background is turned to green, and you can come here and see that it's updated to true now for breakfast. Okay. Oh, that's the mistake there. You can see here the first time I used stores, I didn't even mention status there, and that's why you have two new things coming up here. So you can quickly fix that. I can go to my body component and in this app to do, I can just say yeah, it's status, it should be status. And in order to do the reflection, I'll just delete this to dos collection here first. Or I can also delete the users because anyway I will be creating it when I make this. Like, I'll just delete everything and here it should be nothing now. So I can add a to do, say breakfast, add, and it's added and it's red now. And video edit, add. Now it's added. So now you can refresh this. You can see that it shows user, yeah, to dos and two to dos. Yeah, now the status is false. Now, if I just update on this breakfast, it turns green. And here, if I set the status, it's true. That's nice. That's really, really nice. Okay. So now we click completed with the delete and update functionality. But this thing, it's okay because it's completely staying there because I never changed it to false after I set it to true when I click on the button. So when I click on this add to do button, after you set the input, so I can check to make it a bit efficient, I can make this here dot thing. So once you added the document, after that you can set the input to this and you set show add to do model also to false. So if I refresh, it doesn't show that. And add, and I say lunch, add, it comes here and it immediately goes. So now one more thing I can say is the recent to-dos should come to the top. So for that, I can just simply go to the snapshot, which they are fetching the data. I can wrap this collection inside something called as the query, and that will do that. And I can import this query from the Firestore database. Now this query, I can also pass a function called order by, which will order with based on the time because the field that we have created here is time, and I see time, and I want it in the descending order. So now it'll always show the latest one at the top. So if I just change it to, it'll come at the top, and I can update them. So now it's updated. Since it's updated and the timestamp changed, and it comes up now. And if I delete this, I can delete, I can update, I can add. So there you go. Okay, one more thing, I just need to add some padding here so that it becomes a bit inside. It's sticking to the bottom corner. So sorry, yeah, I can go to the body, yeah, and this studio, yeah, I not added anything here. So I can see class name and I'll see a padding of file so that it just comes in. That's nice, nice. So I think that was my plan to do today, and that completes this project. I'll also give a link in the description for the GitHub repo. You can access that. But what I recommend is you'll try to do it on yourself. Keep this as a reference video and perform write the code and see your output by yourself. That's the best way to learn. So that's it for today. We'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.